All the taxpayers' money that has kept guns in clover down the years is drying up. Their share price is down the toilet. Cash flow assets are sold off. Sawmills are closed. Workers are discarded. Managed investment schemes have collapsed and they're in debt to the ANZ to the tune of a mere $650 million. They have polled every major bank, every investment house and every pulp mill company in the world, and guess what the results are? Zero support. The world has judged it a total and utter dud. Black is the colour and none is the number. The reason why we're flying black today is to signify those dark days in March of 2007 when the great betrayal of democracy occurred in Tasmania. The legislation which so obscenely favours guns is because guns wrote it. The bill, the Pulp Mill Assessment Act 2007, was escorted through the corridors, the toilets, the bar and the chambers of Parliament by a squad of lobbyists, lawyers and heavies from guns, from the CFMEU and from the logging industry. It was tantamount to a coup d'etat. I and hundreds of others saw them gathered on the steps of Parliament House on that beautiful late summer day in March 2007. It was their building. They owned the Parliament. They had scripted and directed what took place inside. What it demonstrated was a breathtaking contempt for the institution of parliamentary democracy by the very parliamentarians whose sacred duty it was to uphold. It remains, as it always was, a grand delusion. The nightmare of an uncompetitive world-scale resource-gobbling industry for an island that is not world-scale has held Tasmania back for 6.5 years. So let's get on with it and do what we do best in Tasmania, establishing innovative, creative, small to medium businesses directed at the quality end of the market.
Pulp Mill is focused on creating large-scale, peaceful community protests, otherwise known as direct actions, which involve peaceful civil disobedience. Our main focus with our protests has been on the corrupt process of the Pulp Mill Assessment Act, with its unconstitutional Section 11, which denies us legal redress. What we share in common is our love for this beautiful Tamar Valley. And our love for our pristine ocean with its myriad of wonderful sea creatures. Our love for our clean air and our wild animals and the untamed spirit of this island. We share desire for safety on our roads without thousands of log trucks. People find our peaceful community protests really empowering, despite the fact that getting arrested really takes us out of our comfort zones. It is a powerful act which governments cannot ignore. I imagine a day when Guns will announce that it will never have finance for this pulp mill. And when it will acknowledge that this pulp mill will never have a social licence. Pulp the mill, we can, we will.
To have large-scale wood-fired power stations, these are the last roll of the dice. Things to do with clear felling of native forests, of burning of forests, of planting industrial-scale monoculture plantations, and the spraying and the chemicals that have been so carelessly applied, and the smoke and the log trucks. What I've also become aware of is just how debilitating the war that is described in forestry in Tasmania has been for people's mental health and for the cohesion of our society.
Climate change will affect most populations in the next decades and will put the lives and well-being of billions of people at increased risk. We should be doing everything we can to reduce our impact on this fragile environment and putting resources into renewable energy sources and alternatives to fossil fuels, not into a pulp mill.
To stand up for your rights and say to the political parties in Tasmania who have, in the dead of night, passed a law that's taken away not only your rights to claim for damages but has imposed an unassessed monster on your valley. It is the younger generation who need and must stand up to reclaim the future. some of the most rotten, stench, stinking gases that you could imagine, and some of the most toxic substances known to man. We will stand up and protect the coastal waters of Tasmania from the toxic build-up of persistent organic pollutants for the Pulp Mill effluent that has never been assessed for bioaccumulation on states' waters, and it's where you will take your grandchildren to fish. And put a toxic flathead on the table as a result of Gunns using this Bass Strait as a dumping ground for its effluent? We want the 40 billion litres of water that should be flowing through the gorge that's been given over to Gunns, diverted, stopped at the Trevelyan Dam and diverted down through the tail race.
If it wasn't for you, that pulp mill would have been built years ago. And there's no question about it that pulp mill now, it's sinking down now like a rotten turd. This Parliament, and our Parliament is dominated by half a dozen families. They kind of inherit it. It's almost like the House of Lords, you know, and no matter what, right, I cannot see Gunns, the proponents of this mill, ever getting any support. Here we are in this extraordinary, beautiful island of Tasmania. It's full of the most talented people, artists and writers, most wonderful people. And for some strange reason, the overwhelming majority of our parliamentarians are absolute dickheads.
When Gunns accept that they have failed, and when the Tasmanian Parliament accepts that it has lost and was wrong to ride roughshod over the rights and privileges and the best interests of all Tasmanians, only then will this war be over.
Never give in, we'll never stop fighting, and we're going to keep on until we nail the culprits that did this thing. Let's never forget, let's go on a blooming witch hunt, get them and dump them. You know, from here, all I can see is an extraordinary sea of faces, of determined, defiant faces that'll never give in, because we won't, and we're going to win this one simply because there's so many people of all political and religious views have got together because they can see that something is wrong, and we'll beat it. And when we'll beat it, we won't have a triumphal party. We'll go after the real culprits, the politicians that betrayed us, right? Because we've got to name them and get rid of them.
Tasmania's beautiful, precious, unique forests are under threat, and that threat would only be increased if this mill was built. The pulp mill debate has been going on for over 6 years now. It's one of the longest running environmental campaigns in Tasmania. It has become about more than just the presence of a pulp mill in our beautiful Tamar Valley. It's about democracy. It's about the community making a decision for how they want their future and their world to be, and not being able to carry out that decision due to those in power who are supposed to represent us.
The incompetent and ignorant Parliament was to make of Tasmania some sort of Borneo in the southern seas. In desperation, Gunns ran a poll recently. Instead of wasting money on a poll, I suggest they pay their bills. They owe the people of Tasmania perhaps tens of millions of dollars for logs that we've given them. Pay your bills, Gunns. Not one single cent of investment money has come for this pulp mill, which just goes to show what sort of a wonderful economic idea it is that Labor and Liberal politicians and their fellow travellers in the upper house were the willing patsies of this gross abuse of parliamentary democracy should never be excused or diminished in any way. It was one of the most shameful episodes. I would say the most shameful episode in our political history. The great irony is that all of this was for nothing. There is no pulp mill. Yet unprincipled government has wasted vast sums of public money on it. Money that should have been allocated to health, to education, to policing, to aged care, to public housing, to roads, you name it. That's where the money should have gone. This war, and it has been a war, that we have been engaged in for nearly 7 years, will only cease on the part of the people whenever it shall have ceased on the part of those who began it. Our only weapon is our refusal. Thank you.